Hello, my name is Corey Reddercop, the CEO here at the Greater Langley Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for watching one of our candidate interviews in advance of the 2025 federal election coming up on April 28th. We've invited each candidate running in the three Langley ridings to participate in video one-on-ones with the Chamber, to introduce themselves to the community and to discuss their priorities and what they want to address if they are representing us in Ottawa. These videos will be posted unedited to our website at langleychamber.com and shared through our communication channels in the lead up to final election day. Today, I'm joined by Melissa Snazell, who's running in the riding of Abbotsford-South Langley, representing the Green Party of Canada. Melissa, nice to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, thank you for the invite. It's good to be included and get their voice out there.
Well, why don't we, speaking of that, why don't we dive in and get your voice here? Did you want to maybe start us off and introduce yourself, your background, and kind of what motivated you to run in the election this time?
Sure. Melissa Snazell. I'm running for the Green Party of Canada in the Abbotsford-South Langley region. Um, I got into politics a little bit accidentally, but I decided that instead of sitting at home shaking my fist, that if I wanted to make change, I needed to get out there and actively make change. So I'm running with the Green Party because it aligns with my ideals and how I think the country should be run. And I feel like I'm ready to take on the challenge and take Ottawa on with what Abbotsford South Langley needs right now in these odd times.
Well, perfect. Well, again, thanks for joining us. So why don't we dive into what I think is probably very top of mind for a lot of people, especially in South Langley and in Abbotsford. We know that part of the province is one of the more trade exposed parts of the country. So I wanted to talk a little bit about tariffs and trade and kind of what your position might be on that. Obviously, businesses in Langley and across Canada are facing challenges with the U.S. tariffs and on again, off again nature of that and the instability that creates. So what do you think and what your thoughts, or the Green Party's thoughts, and the best way to respond to this challenge coming from the US and in both kind of how do we respond to the tariffs specifically, but also how do we make sure that we strengthen our domestic competitiveness and internal trade?
Yeah, I think because we are right on the border and a lot of our trade does involve the border, this is a very important factor for our riding right now. The Green Party is basically solid on there's a bully to the south. He's creating chaos, causing disruptions, and doing it all intentionally. It's all an intentional disruption. So we're feeling like Canada needs to strengthen domestic trade. We need to open up the provincial borders. We need to give small businesses and cross-border trading businesses a bit of tax breaks, a bit of support to make sure that they can keep their doors open, keep their staff employed, and find alternative markets for the products that we either create or bring in or ship out of our area. And it's really important we make sure we have building green infrastructure, and it's a good time for us to sort of take this opportunity to look at Canada's trade and look at our markets and see where we can strengthen and where we can take back our independence.
And I'm going to pivot from there to a related topic, and one of the obviously the impacts of tariffs is it increases the costs people pay. And I don't need to tell you, I'm sure that the cost of living, the cost of doing business, it's top of mind for everybody. It's top of mind for our members. Um, what would be your approach or the Green Party's approach to in Ottawa to tackle the cost of living, lowering the cost of groceries and everyday essentials, and also for our business audience, making sure that businesses the cost of trying to run a business is kept in check as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the Green Party mentioned issues like this and reducing the barriers to small businesses, medium businesses, taking on the corporations, the big conglomerates that are making a lot of money and not really giving a lot back. So we do need the Green Party is very strong this time about balancing the difference between inequality in our economics, in our haves and our have-nots. Like we need to reduce the gap. It's been increasingly growing over the last decades, and it's time to start decreasing it. And so we need to take some of the pressure off of our small businesses who are our local people, bringing money into our economy, our local economy, and putting money back into our local economy. And so give them the tax breaks, the rent breaks that they require, and have the corporations maybe tax them a little bit more, give them a little bit less of a break, just to make sure we're supporting our small businesses, especially with the cross-border issues right now.
One of the things you mentioned in your first response, kind of green infrastructure. I want to pick up on the infrastructure piece there, and Langley. So you're running to represent kind of South Langley and Abbotsford, and this is one of the fastest growing parts of the province. And so going hand in hand with population growth needs infrastructure growth. The municipalities in Canada have a massive deficit on infrastructure, and that's not just kind of basic stuff, water, pipes, sewers, roads. That's let alone building transit or community centers or healthcare. What do you think is the federal government's role in ensuring that as our communities like South Langley, Abbotsford are growing, that we have the infrastructure investments from the senior levels of government to keep up with that growth?
Yeah, that's a huge issue, especially in Langley right now. And what the plan is, the federal government doesn't have a lot of control over what happens, but they have the money and the purse strings to give to those projects. And there are a couple federal programs already in place. But we need to make sure we're funding those and to make sure that there's not grants needed. The municipalities just have a stream of money that they need, that they require to build like the SkyTrain, to build the infrastructure. I mean, our schools are getting overloaded, and the population is just expanding out here like crazy. We need to make sure we have non-market housing for people, build co-ops into our market, and make sure that as we're building them, that we have the green aspect in mind. So like building plans to make sure that we have like the electric infrastructure, that the buildings are equipped to handle the heat with the waves, heat domes that come in the future. Make sure the infrastructure we have for our sewers, for our buildings and roads and townships have the ability to handle floods and the climate issues that we know are coming.
And on that kind of you mentioned co-ops there. So on housing specifically, I mean that's affordable housing is now becoming a business issue. If businesses can't find workers anywhere locally, or they have to commute an hour into their jobs, and that makes it challenging for the businesses, let alone what that means for families trying to find a place to live and raise their family. What is your approach or your thoughts on how we tackle this housing affordability challenge that I feel like we've been talking about for a generation now?
It's true, and this hits home for me because I own a house here in Aldergrove, and at this point, I could not buy my own house. Like I bought it 13 years ago, but I couldn't buy it today if I had to. And I have an 18-year-old son who I look at him and I think, what are his options for the future? And this is partly what I got into politics, is watching him grow and looking at his options for the future. So I think we need to put money into less, bring the market out of privatization. The real estate market can no longer be an investment opportunity. It's got to be housing for people because we need immigration to come in. We need our population to continue to grow. And for that, we're going to need to house people. But people, if they can't afford housing, they're not going to come. So we need co-ops, we need social housing built into a market that has, the private availability, because if you want to buy a house, you should be able to buy a house. But if you can't buy a house, you should be able to afford to rent a house and still pay your groceries. So I think the federal government needs to put money into making sure that the infrastructures that are within like policy to make sure that we can build non-private housing.
Right, I think we're galloping towards the end of our time here, so I've got one more question, then I'll let you wrap up with maybe some closing remarks there. But you've got on a few of your responses, you've kind of layered in sustainability, and I know that's an issue of importance to the Green Party. But do you in this election, which has been so dominated so far with talk of obviously the drama going down in the South, what is your perspective on how we address climate change and sustainability and kind of embedding that across our economy and our country. How does the Green Party see taking that issue forward?
Well, the main thing to remember is all of our main issues, all of the big topics of this election, at the base of them, the climate is represented. So our food security, in our Abbotsford, we have a lot of agriculture. If that agriculture doesn't have the water and the water infrastructure to maintain it, our food prices are going to go up. Same with sort of the poultry farming. If we don't manage disease and make sure that we have climate preparations for taking care of the animals to make sure we have that food supply. Housing, we have to make sure that we're sustainably foresting to make sure we can build the housing and make sure that the housing is resistant to future climate issues and make sure that when we're building, we're not building, where a forest fire is going to take out or a landslide will take out the community and, potentially loss of life. So in every issue we're looking at, and even at the American issue, they're reducing all of their climate strategies. So we we have a lot. The climate is just so important right now, and we just have to keep remembering it at the base of every other issue.
Perfect. Well, did you want to? I'll give you maybe a minute here. Did you want to leave us some closing comments to any of the voters watching this in Abbotsford-South Langley? I know our ridings got moved around a bit this time, so this is a new riding for this election. But do you want to leave any closing remarks on you and your thoughts and the Green Party and why people should give you a vote?
Well, I understand, and in this election, it's been made very clear it's a two-party race. It's an election based a lot in fear, and people are voting sort of either against one party or against another party, or they're not voting out of anger. I just want everybody to just give the Greens a thought. People often think the Greens are just, tree huggers and they're a little bit weird. But we have good policy, we have strong policy, and we're real people who want to make real change. Most of the Greens are not politicians. We're people trying to be politicians. And I, for one, I think we need to give the Green Party a chance to step up. And if you look at our riding, it's going to be a really interesting split, and I think it's going to be a riding to watch for all across the board. It's just going to be a strange mix.
So with that, we'll draw this to a close. Melissa, thanks so much for joining us and giving your thoughts on some of these questions, and all the best of luck on the campaign there.
Great. Thank you so much.